Good evening, everyone. It's Dr. McCoy, and it's time for our Thursday gathering. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And for those of you who have been here before, welcome back. For those of you where it's your first time, welcome. We gather on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've been walking through the book of Luke, the Gospel according to Luke, and we've reached Luke chapter 18. Last week, I focused on verses 1 to 8. Well, this evening, I want to just switch up a little bit because many of you are aware that July is Black, Indigenous, and People of Color Mental Health Awareness Month. BIPOC. When you hear people say that, you know exactly what that means. And so I want to focus on this acknowledging the unique challenges really faced by that community of folks. All right. When we think about mental health, how it relates to BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. So this month helps us to dedicate our focus on the mental health needs and experiences of BIPOC communities. So I want you to think of a Black person that you know. I want you to think of an Indigenous person that you know, and or simply who in this country would be labeled, in the country of America, the United States of America, who would be labeled as a person of color. When was the last time you saw one of those people? I can tell you I saw one this morning in the mirror. She is me. And so I fall into that category and I see those people all the time. I see Black people in America, I see Indigenous people in America, and whom we in this social construct called race would call people of color. So, since we label folks that way, we're all really the human race, but since we have labeled people that way in America, it causes for us to stop and consider what mental illness is like for people in that particular community: Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Now, we know that mental illness does not discriminate, right? I mean, of course not. Mental illness does not care if a person is of a particular race or gender. Mental illness does not care about sexuality or ethnicity, socioeconomic status, or age. We know that. We get that. But because we have segregated ourselves so much in the United States, we have to understand that there are systemic challenges that Black, Indigenous, and people of color actually face in America when it comes to mental health. So those challenges are deeply rooted in social, cultural, and historical and economic factors. They're rooted in those categories. And when we think about America, we can pretty much pinpoint how that's happening to this particular group of people. And often those areas intersect with racism, with colonization, and with marginalization. So I'm going to share with you just some research that I found, a list really of 10 most pressing challenges that BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color face when considering mental health. All right. Number one, I found stigma within the community itself can be a challenge for people who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. When we think about cultural taboos around mental health, usually in those communities, seeking mental health treatment is a sign of weakness. You're going to see who? Now, if you're going to see a kidney specialist or something like that, people are like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But you're going to see a therapist. See, stigma in the community, pressure in the same communities to be strong. As a Black woman, I often hear, this strong Black woman, this constant theme of being strong. I'm supposed to be strong. And now people are saying, check on your strong friends, because people are starting to realize that that is a stigma to seeking mental health treatment. I'm strong, so I don't need to seek out, any type of a therapist. And by the way, in the community, keep that in the family. Keep that in the family. Don't you embarrass this. I can't embarrass my family by sharing this or that. So there's that fear of being judged, or even maybe of being misunderstood by family members or even community members. So that's number one, stigma within communities. The next I found was lack of access. And maybe that first one you can relate to. But lack of access to culturally competent care. Think about that one. Lack of access. We usually hear lack of access to healthcare, but wait, lack of access to culturally competent care. So few providers understand or reflect Black, Indigenous, people of color, cultural backgrounds. They already don't look like you, but then the other part of it is some therapies are not even tailored to understanding you, tailored to really listen to your lived experiences or your belief systems. And so there is a lack of trust in mental health professionals, sometimes due to cultural disconnection. So maybe, yes, they went to school and they got that MD or that whatever they got. It's awesome. They jumped through all of the hoops that America makes you jump through, but you're not necessarily made to jump through the hoop of understanding why, culturally I view, my perspective is a certain way. So you apply this cookie cutter type of idea to everyone, but everyone's not white. Some people are Black, some people are Indigenous, and some people are people of color. So lack of access to culturally competent care. Number 3, systemic racism and discrimination. So we must understand, when considering this particular community or these communities, that everyday racism contributes to their chronic stress and their trauma, even if they don't realize it. They don't even realize they have to give themselves a pep talk before they walk into the job, because racism is there when they get there, when they walk into their work. They don't even understand that they have been labeled based on a behavior. I've been labeled based on it. I am considered aggressive when I'm being assertive. If I'm a Black woman, mad Black woman, no, I'm being assertive. If I assert myself, it's a problem. It's just a system that labels people within this group. And sometimes that causes the mental issue. And then again, if you do seek a therapist and they don't understand because they're not culturally competent, so then that leads to something else. And so this is why we have to have these moments where we stop and we make ourselves aware of these facts. That's what July is about. And go ahead and make your comments. Make your comments. Maybe you do have, those experiences, or, it just makes you shake your head. But we have to be aware in order for things to change, right? Because change starts with us. So then, number 4, another challenge, another pressing challenge, economic barriers, higher rates of poverty and underemployment, limiting access to mental health care, inadequate insurance coverage or lack of insurance, and then prioritizing one need over another. Maybe I need mental health care, but because I'm poor and you see I need something to eat, you give me food, but you don't actually meet my mental health need. You met a physical need indeed, but dismiss the fact that I really need mental health treatment. But economic barrier stops you from doing that for me because I'm poor. So you rather give me a sandwich than to help me or support my seeking of mental health care. Number 5, Intergenerational and historical trauma, the legacy of slavery, the legacy of colonization, the legacy of genocide, displacement. Intergenerational trauma, which is passed down even through family systems. Collective grief and loss that impacts really identity and wellness. So that's another, when considering this list of some of the most pressing challenges that BIPOC face, that's number 5, intergenerational and historical trauma. Number 6, spiritual and religious tensions. This one was on the list as well. Now, I know I've talked about this before, but it really is appropriate to reiterate it, especially since it was on this list. I was like, there it is. Spiritual and religious tensions, spiritual or religious explanations for mental illness that discourage people from seeking professional help. Fear that seeking therapy betrays one's faith tradition, and how churches and spiritual communities sometimes really are under-equipped. That can be a problem as well, under-equipped to address mental health needs. So if I am, for example, a pastor in a local church and I am able to help you spiritually, I need to then be humble enough to know when the spiritual help I've given you, it stops here, because now begins a mental help that someone else can give you, and I can resource you out. So then if you work together with me as your spiritual care provider, and you work with your mental health care provider, then simultaneously we're working together and you are being made whole. So we must remember in faith communities to, again, be humble enough to say, this is where my type of treatment, which is spiritual, that's the application I know and that I do, this is where that ends and where the next thing begins for this person. If we truly want to embrace the type of healing that God provides. Number 7. Oh, listen to this one. Yes. Criminalization and policing of mental health. BIPOC are more likely to have police called during mental health crises, increasing the risk of really harm. And so that's why some folks don't call the police. It's like if someone's having like an episode, like a manic episode, or some type of a mental breakdown, if you will, don't call the police. This is the reality in these communities. Don't call the police, because if you call the police and they show up because they misidentify symptoms as violent behavior, hey, don't call. So then that means that same community doesn't always get the assistance that they need. Not to mention criminalizing youth, indigenous youth, for example. That child is a thug. That child is starting to label that child. And so school to prison pipeline disproportionately then affects Black and indigenous youth with mental health issues. It may just simply be a mental health issue. Just like the child over there who has asthma and needs their inhaler, the child over there that you see they're in a Black body or they're in a non-white body needs mental health attention. Number 8. I know this is a lot. I know it's a lot. Thank you for staying with me, because everything that we're made aware of doesn't make us feel good, does it? Yeah, so thank you for hanging in there, for sticking in there. This is really that time of year, July, when we just stop and make ourselves remember. If we don't already, we make ourselves aware, and then we consider what we're going to do. Number 8, underrepresentation in research and data. BIPOC, Black, Indigenous People of Color, are often excluded from clinical trials or mental health studies. The lack of accurate data then leads to policies and practices that don't meet that community's needs. Limited understanding of culturally unique expressions of mental illness then show up. I'll give you an example of limited understanding of culturally unique expressions of mental distress. Grief can be a type of mental distress. When I was a hospital chaplain, they called me to a unit and there was a large black man and his voice was elevated, presented as really angry, where his mother had just died. And he was not ready for that death. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever ready for their mother's death. What do you think? Well, like any human, he was not ready for his mother's death. And upon her dying, his mental distress, his grief presented in a way that really scared all of these white people. And I'm just telling the story, how it really happened. And so I was grateful that I was the chaplain on call at that time. And so I was dispatched to this unit and I could hear him. And they had told me on the phone that his mother had died. So when I walked on the unit, all I heard was a man mentally distressed due to the loss of his mother. Now that's what I heard. But again, cultural incompetency says we need to call the police. This black guy, this black body is out of control, you see. And so because Black stories and expressions are not always recorded and understood in research and is underrepresented, then that's the response that happens many times. And so our mental distress, rather than seeing it as wow, this is a human being responding to a real challenging moment, our mental distress is then seen as something dangerous, something to be controlled, something that we must protect ourselves from, rather than something that a human being is mentally, emotionally, even physically feeling in their body, and it's just simply them expressing it. So underrepresentation can cause so many people in their incompetency to label mental distress in a way that does not help mental distress seek comfort and care, but puts that mental distress in bondage. So we have to really consider that. Number 9, almost done. I have 10, okay? There's many more, but I couldn't share all of them tonight. Number 9, language and communication barriers. For immigrants, for example, and for non-native English speakers, language barriers can hinder diagnosis and treatment when considering mental health. Sometimes there's a lack of bilingual or bicultural providers. There's a lack of those persons in a given context. And so then cultural metaphors, for example, of distress can often be misunderstood and can even be ignored. So we really need to educate ourselves. If you are a person who really wants to help folks when it comes to, in relation to mental health, you have a lot of learning. It's not just about what you learn in those books. It's not about just passing the exams and getting those letters, behind your name. It's about really understanding the people that you aim to serve. And that happens outside of classrooms many times. So you need to put yourself in other contexts, not just those that are comfortable for you, because they have to come to you. If you're the medical care provider or mental health provider, they have to come to you, perhaps. They have to come to you. But you don't really have to go to them, do you? You don't have to go to their communities if you don't want to. But if you want to be competent, fully competent, you'll place yourself in those spaces, all right? So that you can not have communication barriers, for example. And then number 10. Identity-related struggles. Pressure to assimilate can impact self-esteem and identity formation, can cause mental distress in the first place. And not to mention if a person, a BIPOC person, has to navigate multiple marginalized identities. Like, for example, when we think about Black, Indigenous people of color, say the person is a Indigenous person and they're gay. That in and of itself, that's multiple marginalized identities that person must deal with, and it compounds mental health stressors. Just trying to get us to see what these persons may deal with and how their mental health is impacted. And they may have internal internal things going on that can lead to self-doubt and to shame. And so they need the type of assistance that's out there. They need us, whether you're part of that community or not, we're all part of the human community. So it's so important that we try to gain some type of, even if you don't completely understand, gain some type of empathy where you place yourself in that person's shoes. Don't just be sympathetic. Don't just feel sorry for them, but try and put yourself in their shoes. All right. So let me give you a few facts, and then I want to remind you about this year's toolkit. I usually remind you about the toolkit every year, so I know that's not new to you. But listen to BIPOC community mental health facts. 43% of Black people and 47% of Hispanic people living in the United States attempt to manage mental health challenges on their own rather than seeking a therapist, compared to 35% of white people who do seek a therapist and don't handle it on their own. Think about that. 43% Black people, 47% Hispanic people versus 35% of white people who do actually seek therapy. Only 25% of Asian American and Pacific Islanders receive mental health treatment. Only 25% of Asian American and Pacific Islanders receive mental health treatment. And then, although there is insignificant data, I talked about that, there's insignificant data on Indigenous people who regularly use therapy as a method of managing mental health issues. Data shows that Indigenous people have disproportionately higher rates of suicide and post-traumatic stress disorder compared to any other ethnic or racial demographic. So my friends, each of us, we must think about this. We must consider these realities, and really we have to accept that we have a role. We have a role in supporting our colleagues. We have a role in supporting our friends, our, people in our churches and faith communities, our relatives, even during this month, this BIPOC Mental Health Awareness Month. And so because we all have a role and we all can take responsibility, I want to just remind you of some things that you can do before I give you toolkit information. Make sure you educate yourself. I talked about being in uncomfortable spaces for the sake of someone else, not for yourself, but for the sake of someone else, really. You'll learn along the way, but educate yourself, and then you can educate other people, okay? I'm not the only person who can talk like this. I just researched some things and I threw some of my own, real life stories in, but you can do the same thing. Just find the statistics and share it in your space and have a conversation. I mean, talk to your friends and create spaces that are welcoming and inclusive for other people to talk, and for them to understand why this is important. All of this is important for overall mental health. Make sure you start a conversation. Speak openly about your mental health. I mean, according to your comfort level. And then it might encourage other people to share their own experiences and their concerns. And then make sure you understand resources. I'm going to share a few, like I said, and it'll be in the chat, okay? Some links in the chat, and really make sure that you connect with mental health professionals if you need to through your Employee Assistance Program, EAP, and research local community resources, okay, to get support for you and even for someone in your community. So let me just share with you, because I'm going to give you the Mental Health of America toolkit in the link. I'm going to post it down in the link, okay, on Facebook and on YouTube so that you will have it. But just know that what I'm going to post is that MHA annual toolkit, Mental Health America's annual toolkit. And what it is it's for BIPOC. This toolkit is designed to help individuals, to help groups and organizations to turn awareness into action. So if you're wondering, after all this talking that I've done, what can I do? make sure you check the chat section, okay? The comment section, I should say. I'm saying chat, but the comment section. What should you do? Well, I'm going to put a worksheet in there on healing traditions. I'm going to put a worksheet in there on how to cope when your community is under attack. I'm going to put a worksheet in there that has a resource list and a reading list. There's books that you could purchase to help you and folks in this BIPOC. And I'm going to just let this information just kind of sit in there so that as your week progresses, you can look this over. And however you choose to engage, just know that your actions matter, you matter, and it's up to all of us to take care of ourselves first and then to take care of each other. So take care of yourself and then be sure to take care of someone else. Change is possible. And it begins with us. Thank you for being here on this evening. You are appreciated. And again, don't forget to check the comment section. Thank you for your words. I will respond. And thank you so much for being here. And bless you. You are welcome. You are welcome. Thank you so very much. July is Black, Indigenous, and People of Color Mental Health Awareness Month. Go in peace. Thank you for being here.